So, after being involved in property, I've come to the conclusion that buying a property with cash is the wrong approach. For so many people, including the old me, purchasing a property with cash completely outright is considered to be the gold standard. Pretty much all this has to do with how we deal with debt, with most of the barriers being psychological. Many people do not understand how to manage money effectively and how to make it truly work for them. So in today's video, I'm going to break down why I think purchasing with cash is such a bad idea, and more importantly, what you can do instead. Hello people, I'm Jim. Welcome to the channel. I'm a property investor who's documenting my journey to financial freedom from my day job. I'll be breaking down everything to do with property investing in general, and getting a better grip on your personal finances. So if you're like me and you want to grow your wealth, then please do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on so you know when I post new videos. So let's start with an example. We have two investors, one called Graham and one called Kevin. Both Graham and Kevin have £100,000 to invest into property. Graham wants to invest into as many properties as possible, whereas Kevin wants to buy one property completely outright. So let's explore each option and break down the pros and cons of both approaches. Let's start with Graham first. So with 100,000, he could purchase 4 houses worth 100,000, with 4 lots of deposits of 25,000. In order to keep things simple in this video, let's just suspend reality and say we do not have any other fees or refurbs to factor in. What a wonderful world that would be. So Graham can get 4 houses worth 100,000 with a 75% mortgage, which is normal for buy-to-let mortgages in the UK. Hence the reason he'd be putting down 25,000 on each property, as the remaining 25% is made up from this deposit pot. Now Graham is using a lovely little thing called leverage. If you have no idea what leverage is, then please raise your hand. Well, the Investopedia definition on leverage is: leverage results from using borrowed capital as a funding source when investing to expand the firm's asset base and generate returns on risk capital. Leverage is an investment strategy of using borrowed money, specifically the use of various financial instruments or borrowed capital, to increase the potential returns of an investment. Leverage can also refer to the amount of debt a firm uses to finance assets. Class dismissed. It is worth going over that last line again. Leverage can also refer to the amount of debt a firm uses to finance assets. While on the definition train, let's define an asset. An asset is something containing economic value and or future benefit, which simply means it's something which is going to make you money and potentially go up over the long term. So if we link all of this together, leverage is when we use debt, money from the bank, to buy assets. In this instance, Graham is using it to purchase houses. These loans from banks are known as mortgages, which will involve you putting up a certain value up front, which is simply a deposit. Then the bank will loan you the rest of the money to purchase the property. For investment properties, normally a 25% deposit is needed to purchase. This is how Graham can buy 4 houses for the price of one outright, meaning his portfolio will be worth 400,000 and he would have 100,000 worth of equity built into that portfolio. And the amount he would have in debt will be 300,000. It is worth talking about interest rates now. When you take out a mortgage, the bank will charge you interest, which is simply the charge for the privilege of borrowing money from the bank. The interest rates on mortgages, particularly at the moment, are really cheap. You'll be looking at an interest rate of anywhere between 2 to 3% at the moment. When compared with credit card or car loan interest rates, they are super cheap, which is another major tick in the box for using mortgages and not cash, as the cost of lending is so cheap. This gets even better when you link it with inflation. Definition time again. All inflation is a general increase in prices and the fall in purchasing value of money over time, with the recent announcements from the Bank of England saying that inflation in the UK is at 2.5%, which means prices generally have increased at 2.5% on stuff. This is the reason why Freddos now cost £10,000. Maybe in a dystopian future there'll be no money. The Bitcoin experiment will have failed, and instead we all use Freddos as a store of value. Anyone else want a Freddo? But as the value of stuff goes up, this means the pounds in your pockets are worth less, as they can purchase less. Hence the reason why in times of high inflation, people love to own assets like property, because inflation also has the same impact on debt. It results in it being worth less. So in real terms, inflation is paying down your debt for you. So if you have an interest rate lower than the 2.5% at the moment, in real terms, it's costing you nothing to have the debt. This is one of the major advantages for Graham. Over the long term, inflation is helping pay down his debt. Not only is inflation paying down the debt on Graham's houses, but the value of the assets are also going up. Now roughly in the UK, house prices double every single 10 years. So let's say he owns the houses for 10 years. Of course, this is all theory as timing is never spot on with this, but it's meant to explain the general point. Now after 10 years, they should have doubled to around 200,000 each, meaning the value of his portfolio is now 800,000, and Graham has a 75% mortgage on each of this, meaning he owed 75,000 on each property, meaning the debt of his portfolio is still 300,000, but he now has 500,000 in equity as the house prices have gone up, meaning that as a percentage, the amount of debt is 37.5% of the total value of the portfolio, whereas previously it was 75%. This is the benefit of property prices going up over the long term. Now this is where the magic really happens with property prices going up. You get the opportunity to refinance your portfolio. So in this situation, Graham's portfolio is worth 800,000, but he still owes 300,000 across the 4 mortgages, but he now has that 500,000 in equity built into the properties. So he can utilise that money via the refinance, and this would involve him pulling it out. Again, if he wanted to pull out as much as he could, then he could get 75% of the value. So in this case, the value is 800,000, and 75% of that is 600,000. He would have to pay back his mortgages, which would leave him with 300,000 left. Now, Graham could use this pot of money to expand his portfolio. Let's say he wanted to purchase some more of the properties he already has, as they've worked really well for him. They are now worth 200,000. So in order to put 25% down, he would need 50,000, meaning in theory he could purchase another 6 properties like the 4 he already has, resulting in him having a 10 property portfolio which in theory would be worth £2 million. This is of course all theory, but the principle is sound. It's an approach which many investors use and something I want to do myself. You do not have to bring yourself back up to the 75% loan to value, which is simply the amount of money you loan as a ratio of the value of the property. You could take it to 50% LTV, meaning you would have a mortgage for 50% of the value and you would have 50% equity. This is often a balance between the risk profile of the person and how leveraged you are across your portfolio as a whole. This is one of the reasons why property is an unbelievable asset class, as you can buy houses, then wait, pull money out and buy more houses. Who doesn't like the sound of that? Now when Graham takes out his mortgages, he goes for interest only. This feeds into the point around letting inflation pay down the debt, as he only ever pays the interest, which is simply just the cost of borrowing. Not only this, but getting an interest-only mortgage has another added benefit, which is extra cash flow. So back to definition time. What do I mean when I say cash flow? So in this case, Graham will be renting out these properties each month to a tenant, and let's say he gets $650 a month. Now, he has to pay the interest back on the mortgage, as he's on an interest only, which will cost him £187.50 at an interest rate of 3%. Let's say he's always getting someone else to manage it for him, and he's paying them 10% of the rental income, which is £65 a month, and he also has some insurance for £40 a month. Now there might be other things to factor in like voids, but I'll leave it at that to keep it simple. So his monthly overheads are £292.50, meaning after he's paid all of his expenses he has £357.50 left. Now this figure is his cash flow, the amount of money he makes each month. This is another good reason to do interest-only mortgages, as you have more money each month to reinvest. Whereas if you use the repayments only, you would have to pay the interest and the principal. This means the amount you would pay back each month would be higher, which in turn would result in a lower cash flow each month. So Graham has 4 properties doing this for him, and he would make £1,430 a month from his portfolio. Does Graham spend that all on oat milk lattes from Starbucks? Of course not. He has a few options. He could reinvest it into the stock market, or he could start building another pot to purchase even more properties. It's not all upside in this situation, as when it comes down to the brass tacks, the bank can take control of your property if anything happens with you paying back the loan. This is something which happened in the 2008 crash, as too many people were too leveraged, meaning they had mortgages they could not afford. This was particularly prevalent when the house prices tanked and people had mortgages which are more expensive than the value of their house. Then, of course, the banks came in and took control of the properties, leaving lots of people without homes. Now this is where Kevin comes into the chat. So Kevin spends all of his $100,000 on buying a house outright, meaning he has zero debt, nothing, not a penny. Now this does give Kevin lots of security, as he does not have any debt, so if something happened with his working situation, then he would not have to stress about paying the mortgage on his investment property. So there's no chance his house could get taken away from him by the bank. So all of this means that his portfolio is worth $100,000, which when we compare it to Graham, his was worth $400,000 due to the fact he got 4 properties instead of 1. Now we also looked at what Graham's portfolio would look like in 10 years, and it would be worth $800,000, whereas Kevin's will be worth 200,000. We can also look at the differences in cash flow. So Graham was making £1,430 a month after he paid for his mortgages, management fees and insurance. Now let's assume Kevin has bought a similar style property to Graham and the rent is the same. Obviously Kevin does not have to pay his mortgage, so the only fees in this situation would be a letting agency fee and insurance, which will come in at around £105, meaning his cash flow each month will be £545. So each month Graham is making more cash flow than Kevin due to the fact he has more properties. The good thing for Graham is that he's getting his tenants to pay the interest off on his loan on his mortgages, which is one of the reasons why property investing is so attractive. Now, running 4 properties will have higher expenses when compared with running 1. There might be more wear and tear costs and more headaches to deal with tenants, but this is balanced out with the fact that Graham's risk is spread across 4 properties instead of 1, like Kevin. So if something happened to one of Graham's tenants and he had an empty property for a while, he could cover it with income from other properties, while still turning a profit. But Kevin would be making zero cash flow each month if something happened with his tenant. So much of this is down to risk and managing it. For me personally, I would rather have more units to spread the risk across them and stop the potential of a tenant leaving and not make any money. As an investor, I want to use leverage to grow a portfolio, but I understand not everyone is like me. Some people want to pay off their own house to not have to worry about the stress of paying for it. The same might be said for people who want a mortgage-free investment property as a pension. I think this is where you need to understand your long-term goals and make sure your approach lines up best with this. For example, my plan for at least the next 10 years is to try and get as many buy-to-let as possible using interest-only mortgages. I hope this will be able to grow a nice portfolio alongside a decent cash flow each month. So in my opinion, the upshot of all of this is if you want to grow a big portfolio, you're going to have to get comfortable with having debt. But as long as you can use it in the right way, it can pay dividends in the long term. So please let me know in the comments what your long-term investing plan is and which approach you want to use. From my perspective, this does not mean I would never purchase a property with cash. There are some situations where purchasing cash is a massive advantage. Firstly, you can act so much quicker when you're a cash buyer, which certainly in today's market, speed is everything. Not only this, but some properties are tough to get mortgages on. For example, if you had a property with a unique layout or some major issues, then a bank might not lend against it. So in this case, purchasing cash gives you the option to take on a project and maybe flip it on and sell it after you've done a refurb. But generally, when it comes to purchasing a property for the long term, I believe using leverage is the best way to do this. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, give the like button a tap and also turn the notification bell on. And if you enjoyed this video, please check out my other video on how to make £281 a month while you sleep. See you in the next one, guys. Cheers.